Mason, Israel, and Malek Shaw are Gen Z entrepreneurs and co founders of Socialite, a free app that removes short form content from social media platforms so users can stay connected without losing hours to the scroll. Built from their own lived experience growing up as part of the first generation to develop online, Socialite is already helping hundreds of thousands of people reclaim their attention on both iOS and Android. Hi, guys. I'm so excited to speak with you.
Yes, thank you for having us on.
Awesome. So, one of my favorite things is, and I told you this offline, is to chat with Gen Z activists and Gen Z entrepreneurs like you guys. And the reason is, and I told you this offline, but you guys need to make the change in your own generation, right? So, I love that you're trying to do this. So, you're both college students, actually. And you built this app to help people break free from the very platforms that you grew up on. So, can you tell us about your personal experiences growing up in Gen Z with social media, and what was the moment you guys realized that something had to change?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we kind of had very like slightly different experiences with phone usage and kind of how our parents handled it. Like I had a phone at the very start of middle school. I mean, he didn't get one until high school, but we both weren't allowed to have social media until high school, and that was like right. I mean, and before that, honestly, social media wasn't what it was today, which is where when in 2020 when TikTok really came out, and a lot of people were spending a bunch of time on that because I mean they were at home. It was how
Yeah.
people connected, made fun videos. But what other platforms realized, like YouTube and Instagram and a bunch of others, is wow, the short form content stuff is really what people want to watch, and it's just such a great variety. And they're like, wow, like this is a great way to get people to spend more time on our platforms, and of course that's what they want. And so everyone kind of added that element to it. And sure enough, you would like we I remember it was either freshman or sophomore year of high school. Me and all of my friends, our friend group kind of collectively decided we were deleting TikTok. We're like, we don't need the short form content. We don't need the reels, and we just want to use the other platforms to stay connected with each other. And that's what we did. And then we found out that Instagram had reels as well. So we just kind of transitioned over to that. And that was
Yep.
something we really couldn't delete, because at the end of the day, we used, like, I was on student council, so a lot of like the stuff we posted about the event was on Instagram. And
Yeah.
I was also we have this high school game called Senior Assassin, and I was running that through social media. It's really like a lot of people really don't especially parents don't understand this is how our generation communicates and connects. And then there's also those elements that are very distracting. And so what we decided to do is we kind of did a challenge where we were going to keep Instagram on our phones and the other social apps like Snapchat, but not scroll on short form content for a month. We kind of all held each other accountable for that. And what we found was it was really, really difficult because there's
Yeah.
all of these very creatively placed traps to really get people scrolling and going down that rabbit hole. You click on a video your friend sends you, and then you can it's instinctual. You just do it. Like it's like I was on autopilot for the first few days. I was like, I'm not scrolling, but I still ended up scrolling all the time.
Yeah.
And so we were like, and so we ended up needing to delete the social medias off of our phone entirely, and then we missed
Mm-hmm.
out on the connection piece. And so we just kind of were constantly uninstalling and reinstalling to check certain things. And there was really no way to escape the stuff that we didn't want to see while still being connected. And that was kind of how Socialite was born. But that was really our relationship with social media. Is we were like, we don't want to delete it. It's very, very useful tool, very powerful tool. If and it's great in so many different ways, but there's also elements of it that are just mixed in that you can't escape. And that's kind of our thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, the first thing that pops out to me is compared to other kids in your generation, and I mean, you could tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like your parents waited maybe a little bit longer. That's interesting because I talk to so many Gen Z activists that say, yeah, I had it at 8, 9, 10, it was unbridled, right? So I think that's kind of interesting. I wonder, did your parents kind of instill those values in you? Is that why they delayed? Because you said you also both didn't have social media for a while. I'm just curious.
Yes, no, that's exactly right. And I think my parents were definitely a little bit more strict about this as well. And so I actually wasn't allowed to have Snapchat even at the beginning of high school. And I think that
Yeah.
kind of gives me a unique perspective in the sense that I felt like I was missing out. Like it's the beginning of high school and everyone's going out and trying to meet as many people as possible. And so you kind of introduce yourself, you make that connection. And the next step was people would ask for my Snapchat and I would tell
Yeah.
them no. And it serves as like a casual intermediary between getting to know someone in person and getting their phone number, which is seen as like, a more like significant connection. And so I think that kind of just drove home how important it is to have the social media apps, as they are really kind of the main connection base for our generation.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. So maybe Malik, you want to take this one. I want to ask you a little bit more about the app. So Socialite, it targets Reels, Shorts, and Spotlight, and not necessarily social media broadly. So you guys mentioned this a little bit already, but can you expand on what makes short form video ultimately problematic compared to the rest of the social media experience? I think you touched on it, but maybe a little bit more about that specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. So the short form content is kind of the epidemic that's been added recently. And just to clarify, those are like the short videos that are generally under a minute that all social
Yeah.
media platforms have integrated. And why they're damaging and where they came from is because these social media companies profit based on how long they can keep you on your app. And
Yeah.
the reason they added the short form content is because that is the easiest way to do it. It is designed to be addictive and to capture your attention so that you spend more time on these apps. And
Hmm.
so it does that by giving you instant dopamine. That's the big one, is just scrolling through, you're able to consume content. And it has a lot of damaging impacts because one, getting instant dopamine from a video is damaging to your body. And then secondly, it also destroys your attention span because you're used to
Yeah.
consuming the content incredibly quickly and just having it kind of at your fingertips. And so a
Hmm.
lot of people in the younger generation have become kind of a lot less comfortable with just sitting and having a little bit of free time because
Yeah.
you're 2 clicks away from having that instant dopamine and all those videos just to like fill your mind. And so it's also led to kind of the uptake of people just going on social media, not even for the social side, but just to consume content because it gives them something versus nothing.
Yeah, for sure. And then just to add a little bit to what you're saying, to explain to people, and I know you guys know this, but the other thing about short form video is the algorithms use intermittent reinforcement, right? So it might show you something that you really like, and then another thing that you really like, and then maybe something you don't like so much, right? So a lot of experts liken it to like pulling a slot machine, right? So
Yes.
there's an element to it that's very similar to like what gambling does to your brain, right? Which is very different
Absolutely.
than sitting and watching even a 2, 3, 5 minute video, right? On YouTube is very different than scrolling shorts. And this is what I try to really help parents understand because, I work with parents and teachers and kids of all ages. But the hardest thing I think for people to understand that I actually hate the concept of screen time. It's not really about screen time, like even for kids. It's about, well, what are they doing, right? Because sitting down and watching a movie is so different what it does to your brain and your attention and everything else than scrolling TikTok for an hour and a half, right? So
Yeah, for
and I
sure.
think that's what you guys are saying too, which is like, yeah, there can be things about social media that are connective and positive, right? But let's maybe minimize some of the things that are much more harmful and more predatory, frankly, right? So those are the
Yeah,
things I was thinking about
absolutely.
as you were
And
talking.
yeah, and I'll just
Yeah,
add on to that. Like, what you were saying about the slot machine kind of casino aspect of it is really true. And so what people don't realize is like everyone thinks like I'm watching these videos for entertainment. That's in the front of your mind. That's what it is. So what is happening to everyone, and what you don't realize in the back of your mind is it's just like, whereas when you pull a casino machine, you don't know what the outcome is going to be, and it's actually
Yeah.
the one of the most addicting parts is not the videos themselves. It's the anticipation of what's next. You don't like the
Yeah.
video that you're on, you get bored of it. It's like you really don't know what's next. And the hit of dopamine comes when you flip through and something new, and it's like like every time you have a chance to get something different, something funny, something cool, and
Yeah.
that's a huge part of it. And what happens is, with kids our age, no one's in a doctor's office in a waiting room that's you're going to play a Netflix show. It's not going to happen. You have a few extra minutes. You're like, okay, this is great. I can spend my time doing this for a few minutes. And it's the same thing when someone my age will go start their homework. You're like, okay, I want to chill for 15 minutes. I don't want to go to the TV, turn on a show and watch it. That sounds like so much effort to some, which is kind of crazy in our day, that something like that is such a big deal. But with pulling out your phone, it's easy. It's like, I'm going to watch a few short videos. I don't have time for a movie, but I sure have time to, sit on my phone and, chill out or rest for 15 minutes. And it's just, that video is just like, oh, it's one more video. It's one more video. And then that just keeps
Yeah.
going. And it's so hard to break that cycle. And it starts with the fact that it's easy and it's short, and your intention is not to spend a lot of time on it, but that's what ends up happening.
And I think people also conflate watching short form content as a way of like resting and, kind of calming your mind, when in reality it's providing a ton more stimulation than pretty much any alternative. And so it doesn't actually give your brain a rest as well.
That's so true. You guys said something really interesting when you talked about effort, right? Like turning on Netflix or whatever and looking for something, that's so much work. Like I don't feel like dealing with it. The thing that also stood out to me, and this is what happens with short form video, it's fed to you, right? So it might be showing you things that you might not really even want to see. You're not seeking it out, right? But it's feeding them to you. And this is where things can get very harmful. But one of the things I think about a lot, especially with my own kids, is this idea of agency. And I don't know if you guys wanted to react to this, but to me, I'm kind of a rebel, right? Like I don't want anything controlling me. And I hate the idea that my kids don't have agency over what they might want to look at, right? And that's a very different experience. Like let's say you go to YouTube, you search for something that you want to see, and then you click on a video. It's very different than opening your phone and just consuming whatever it feeds you, right? Did you guys want to react to that at all? That's what I was thinking about as you were talking about the effort.
Yeah, sure. I can definitely speak to that. I think, it is very interesting that you don't have that choice when you go on social media. And it's like I said, it just goes back to that casino thing where you don't know what you're going to see. But what's interesting is, the algorithm really knows you better than you might know yourself. There's so much data. I mean, and there's so much data behind it. It's not, it doesn't actually know you and what you want, but it's following. I mean, social media has millions and millions and billions and billions of users. And so when you think about it, like for example, from an app developer perspective, like we do something called A/B testing, where we try and test as many different variations of onboardings for our app or different screens for our app, and we see how small sample sizes of our group of our users react to that, and see if it's something that they might like or might dislike. And social media and in these companies like Meta can run millions of these tests, within an hour. And and so they just have so much data that they can really see, okay, like this kind of person is interacting with these kinds of videos throughout, even like they know what time of the day it is where you're at. Sometimes they can even know your location. They can just pull a bunch of different data, and it's like it's a web of like, okay, based on all of these common trends that we've seen, this person is displaying these exact habits right now. So this might be the next video that they might like, because 200,000 other people that were, interacting with these previous videos in this way were, really interacted with this next video the best. So like they just have so many reference points where it's honestly like going to Netflix and finding a show is like, you have to really think about what you want to watch. Social media and the short form content specifically, it chooses it for you. And normally it's right. And it's a pretty scary thing that they have that kind of data and that kind of power to really know what you want in that way. But it's definitely true that it really does take out agency, and and that's why people get into this pattern of where they just don't even realize they're scrolling anymore, because it's so easy. The next video is just so perfectly catered. It's like you have to watch it, and then there's going to be another great one right behind it.
Yeah. I mean, I would just push on that a little bit. I agree with you that it's what you might like, but it's also what they know you can't look away from too, right?
Yes,
which is sometimes
absolutely
not the best content for you, right? So it's both of those things, I think,
That's
together.
a great
And
point.
this is
yeah.
And this is where young people get harmed by content, whether it's like looks maxing or, body image for girls, that's how this happens, right? I mean, they don't want to be looking at cutting content. Sorry to put a dramatic thing out there, but but it's true. But it's content that the algorithms know that is going to suck them in, that they can't look away from, and often it can be harmful. Extreme, shocking, violent, whatever you name it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because and that's a great point. And it goes back to the algorithm doesn't know who you are, and it doesn't know exactly what these videos are about. but it does
Yeah.
know that
Right.
this person spent this amount of time interacting with it, whether that's that they really
Right.
were upset about it and felt the need to comment about it or say something about it, or maybe they couldn't look away because it related to them in a certain way, but it was a very negative way. And it's so true. It's really about how much time you interact with a certain thing.
Yeah, the algorithm doesn't care about you, right? It's like you said, it's just data. Yeah.
Exactly. It's all
Okay.
data.
I'd love to come back to focus for a second. So whoever wants to take this, either one of you, research has shown our ability to focus, and this is collectively, not just young people, has declined 69% since 2004. So it went from 2.5 minutes to 47 seconds. So you covered this a little bit, but how does short form video relate to attention and focus? And then how does cutting down on it help young people regain it?
So I think that short form content has been particularly damaging to focus, and that to kind of engage with the content, you don't need the same amount of time. So you're kind of building these micro habits where you can just consume the amount of content, the entirety of the short form video in that short amount of time. And so you get out of practice with kind of dealing with something and actually like focusing on it for a while. And then I think it's also negative in that it's easier than the alternative. It's much easier to scroll on your phone and to get the dopamine out of it than it is to stick with something and focus with it. And so people have kind of moved toward having the habit of integrating scrolling into whatever they're doing. Like you'll be loading the dishwasher and then, you'll scroll like 1 or 2 videos and then you'll go back to loading the dishwasher because you wanted that quick little dopamine break rather than just sticking through the task. And this applies to homework as well, as Mason said. People will often kind of have a couple minutes scroll right before they begin the task of schoolwork. And then midway through the schoolwork, you feel that urge to go like do something that's more fun, more easy, that's right at your fingertip. And so it just breaks that pattern where you could have been focused and continued with the task. And instead you kind of chose the easy way out. It's that, I mean, that is kind of the roots of addiction.
But even when we're not scrolling, right, it's still affecting our attention span, because what happens is these patterns that you build when you're using your phone very much take effect even if you don't have your phone. And that's kind of, I think the main reason why attention span has declined is because people are getting used to and it doesn't even have to be social media. It can be anything. This world, it's crazy that you can tap a few buttons on your phone and a sandwich can show up at your doorstep within 25 minutes, right? It's everything is so quickly. Everything happens so quick now. People have higher expectations for convenience in every aspect. Like our app, at the start when we launched, it was a bit slower. People people were complaining that it was taking a long time to load, and it was like it was 3 seconds. And it's like, and people care so much, even though they're wasting time on their phone, they care so much about those 3 seconds, like it's going to make a difference. And it's like, that's the real attention span is that you're used to convenience, whether it's getting served another video the second you're bored, or whether it's you're bored of this task. Okay, I can open another tab and start this other thing. The world is designed now to have you switch between things very quickly, and that has caused people's attention spans to really, really decline. It's like even in movie theaters now, people are sometimes on their phones. Movie production has changed in a way where they will restate the plot. They'll have more action moments just because people lose focus very easily. And so I think I really think it's tied into social media. Like I remember Instagram has added, or all of the platforms have added, a 2x speed button where you can hold it down and put the video into double speed. And I forget what I was doing. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I was not on my phone. I was doing some other task, and I instinctively went for thought about pushing a 2x speed button. I think it was someone who was talking to me actually, and I was just for a very split second I thought about reaching for a 2x speed button. I'm like, wait, I'm in a conversation. That's crazy that instinct that you're doing on social media, where you're trying to speed things up and make it quick and convenient, has really changed attention spans everywhere, especially in the classroom. It's just your brain gets trained on everything it experiences, and if that experience for 3 hours a day is just straight content where you can change what you're looking at any moment, of course it's going to apply to everyday life. So that statistic, as unfortunate as it is, it's not surprising considering the world we live in now.
Yeah, there was so much in what you just said there. I think one of the most interesting things, and as you said, it's not just short form video, but it's this concept of instant gratification that our culture has moved towards. And I'm Gen X, so I'm 100 years old, but I grew up in a time where everything, so let's talk about media, for example, right? TV, which is what we grew up with, when it was on, it was on. When it wasn't on, it wasn't on. You couldn't record it. You had to be there in that moment at that time. So there's a couple things there. One, you had to work a little bit harder, but two, there was a collective experience around it, right? So everybody watched the show at the same time. There was Saturday morning cartoons. All the kids would get up and watch it, but then it was over, right? And so many things have changed, but like with media, that's a big difference. One of the things that I think about a lot, and I'm not anti-tech, I'm actually like very pro-tech. I've been a social media marketer for 20 years. Like I use AI every day. Like that's not the issue at all. For me, it's more about protecting the developing mind, right? Because as you said, if you're wiring the developing mind to constantly get these quick dopamine rewards, that's the way we describe it, quick dopamine versus slow dopamine, right? Like it's not you were mentioning the dishwasher. You're getting dopamine when you finish that dishwasher, right? But it takes a lot of time and you have to work hard to get it, right? Versus that short form video is like the complete opposite. So like back to like comparing the way I grew up, I do think a lot about just sort of easing my kids in to this like fast-paced instant gratification world, because I don't think instant gratification is good for kids. Like maybe when you get older,
Absolutely.
it's a little better, right? But then I also think a lot about this idea of building back in friction. So, I mean, you talked about you can get anything you want whenever you want, right? So as opposed to DoorDash, like I do think about, well, I'm just going to send my son's in 7th grade on his bike to go get his food. Like I really have to think of these moments where I want them to work a little bit harder, right? For what they're getting. But I'm also crazy. Like not everybody will do this. And I understand that. But yeah, I think there's so much in what you said about our culture just in general.
Yeah, but I think it's great what you're doing is, and I think honestly all parents should do that. I think there does instant gratification is something that like that's not how life is. When whether you're working a job, whether you're starting a business, like you have to work for hundreds of hours before you see results. And if you're used to getting that instant gratification, it's so much easier to just give up if you don't see the results that you want to see. I think about this. There's kind of two negative things, like especially for young girls. There's two issues with social media. One, they're seeing these unrealistic body standards, and they try to replicate those. But then the other issue is that you can. I mean, there's no doubt that if you work very hard for something, you can achieve it. If if you're a guy and you want to be very muscular, you can go to the gym, but you're not going to see that result in the first couple months. And people think everything's so easy. People expect everything to happen instantaneously. I remember my parents talking to me a few days ago. They told me when they were younger, they would have a recorder, and when a song came on the radio, they would literally record it, and they would build their own playlist with and they would wait for hours just to hear it. And the amount of dopamine they got from hearing that one song and being able to record it and have that in a playlist, despite the quality being probably pretty terrible, something that someone our age wouldn't even listen to. It's just like the standard is so much lower. You can be so happy with so little. And now it takes so much to be happy. And it's like when you experience when you talk about happiness and just the overall experience of feeling joy, it's you really have to think about where you're setting your baseline. Because if you're completely off of your phone and a funny thing happens in your everyday life, and that laughter, that experience that you have, is going to bring you so much joy and so much happiness relatively. And if you're watching funny videos all day on your phone and you're constantly being served with that kind of content, you go out and you see someone funny or somebody makes a joke, it might not bring you as much joy just because your baseline is so high. And so I think for all parents, it's about if you want your kid to have some kind of experience, whether it's a digital experience, there needs to be something to earn that. We always did. We had to complete all of our homework before. When I was younger, we had to complete all of our homework, and then we would have 15 minutes of fun. And that 15 minutes of fun was the most fun I think I've ever had, because it was I had 15 minutes to go on my iPad, spend time with my brothers, and then it was done. And then I would work again the next day to achieve that same thing. And now parents will be at a dinner table and don't even want to put the effort in to talk to their kids. They'll put them in front of an iPad, and they're just consuming this content all day. It's whatever they want to see, whenever they want to see it. And then when they're forced to have an actual conversation, it's so much less meaningful and so much less engaging. And I don't think a lot of people wonder why we the world is the way it is and why people have such short attention spans. But when you look at what's happening in the world, it's pretty clear to see why, you know? So I think what you're doing
Yeah.
as a parent is awesome. And I think that's something that a lot of people should take notes on is, yeah, your kids should be able to, you should have to earn those experiences and not have a bunch of instant gratification.
Oh, good. Tell my kids because they're not really happy with me, but I don't really care. I know it's good for them.
Exactly.
I want to just bring up one more point and then we'll move on. But
Yeah.
you were talking about happiness and how it's harder to be happy when you have so much at your fingertips whenever. I don't know if you guys know Dr. Anna Lemke. She wrote Dopamine Nation. In Dopamine Nation, I think, or maybe it's one of her lectures, I can't remember, but they've studied this and it's this idea. So we're in this world of plenty, right? So this with tech, it's what you guys were describing, right? Where we can get anything we want whenever we want, right? But it's also food, right? We grew up as hunter gatherers where food was scarce. Now you can go wherever you want and get food really cheap, right? And as well as goods, right? When I was growing up, like Walmart wasn't as much of a thing, right? That became a thing later where people could get goods so easily. But her premise of this, and this is based on research, that too much plentiful anything, right, actually does not make us happy. And they've looked at actually people in more wealthy countries, richer countries, are actually less happy than people in countries that might be, you know, a little bit, I don't know, lower socioeconomic status or whatever. So I guess I just wanted to validate what you're saying, that this is absolutely supported in research. And it kind of goes back to our hunter gatherer days where we had to work really hard to get that little berry in the wild, right? The little sweet thing, or even to get our food or whatever it was, right? And our brains are just not wired to get this much, this quickly, and this easily. So I just wanted to like add to what you're saying, because I think that's so important that people understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Cool.
even just
Yeah.
to add on to that, I think this short form content, while it does kind of, it takes you away from getting the happiness out of the real life moments, I think the flip side of that is it draws you into getting your happiness from these like digital kind of short form content videos,
Yeah.
which is like a huge part of the problem because it makes itself worse. It's kind of like a self amplification in a sense.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So we covered a lot of different things, but I want to come back to parental controls for a second. And I'd love to hear, I saw that this is something that's part of your app. So I'd love to hear about that. But let's talk about Apple's parental controls for a second. So they have had documented security flaws. And according to leaked documents, and this is from the TikTok lawsuit, this is separate to Apple's parental controls, but their own time limit tool only reduced teen usage by 1%. So, their own controls are, I mean, in my opinion, really just PR stunts. But Socialite works differently in that it removes those addictive features rather than blocking access. So I think that's a really important distinction. So why does that matter? Why does that distinction matter? And why don't traditional parental controls actually work?
Yeah. So I mean, I can take this one. So there's a lot of parts to this. So a lot of the apps that are currently on the market that people are using, because a lot of people my generation understand they have a problem, and it's really all or nothing with these apps. So there's apps like, so I can think of like 10 right now, but I'll give you a few. There's Push Scroll. You have to do push-ups to unlock your app. There's a certain amount of push-ups you do, a certain amount of minutes you get. There's Opal. They were the first. They were and they're a great app. They're absolute pioneers to this. And what they do is, you set time limits. You have times in the day where you can and can't use these apps, and you have a certain amount of time that you can spend on these apps. And there's a bunch of other, there's bricks. So they are a physical barrier where you have to tap the physical device to lock your phone, and then you tap it again to unlock your phone. And by your phone, I mean certain apps that you choose to lock. And so the thing with all of these other apps that we found is that yes, they work, and for some people they're great. But what they do is they lock out your entire app. And so people that use Snapchat, Instagram for communication, or might want to go on to see somebody's, checks what somebody's doing, they can't do that without unlocking the app. So you'll go tap your brick, you'll do some push-ups, you'll unlock, you'll go to Opal and you'll choose you'll choose to have a 15-minute break, right? And then you go onto the app and everything's there. And so you can still get caught by scrolling. And it's also very easy to bypass these restrictions and bypass what these apps are trying to do. But when you get into the app, you're instantly exposed to all of the short form content. But then when you're locked out of the app, you don't have the messages, you don't have what you need. So it's a very all or nothing, right? And so what a lot of people really want is they want to have the communication and the stuff they're looking for all of the time, and the distractions none of the time. And so that's the major distinction with Socialite. Is what we do is we take it, I'll use Instagram as an example. So we take the reels out. We can filter out your homepage so you don't see ads, you don't see posts from anyone that you're not following, and you still are able to search people, and you can still see your friends' stories and the people you follow. But that's it. And then once you're done, it'll say you're all caught up. You've seen all of the people that you're following. You've seen all the people that you want to see, and you can't see anymore. And that's what a lot of people are really looking for, is a way to be intentional and use social media the way it was designed, which is to stay connected and not be exposed to all of the distractions. And that's what we do. And right now, most of our users are people that are taking their own initiative and understand they have a problem, and they have gotten our app because of that. But for parents, it's the same exact thing with Apple screen time controls, where you can have your kids have a certain limit with a certain amount of time, or have certain hours of the day where you're having downtime. But what if my parents set limits for me, right? And then I'm out for the night or whatever, and I need to text my friend on Snapchat because that's they're kind of a mutual connection. I said I was going to meet them at this place at this time, and some plans changed, and now I can't reach them. My Snapchat's locked for the night. Maybe my parents went to bed. Maybe I can't reach them. They can't unlock my app. So I don't have any way to access that. And so what we do with Socialite is, like, you can access Snapchat whenever you want to talk to people, but you don't get to get caught in the scrolling and the trap at all. And that's what parents can do with our app as well, is they can select what they want to filter out and what they want to block. And we're still actively developing this feature, but it is available right now, but we're constantly improving it. And our goal is to make it so parents can be like, hey, you can have the X amount of time with this feature, X amount of time with that feature, and really get parents to have that kind of control, which is really what we're aiming for. And the great part is, a lot of kids know they have issues and want to also help themselves. And so we don't just keep it to the parents. If a parent doesn't turn on a feature, they can leave it to the kids to decide how they want to control. Because at the end of the day, it's about parents and kids working together to really help each other, and to have those healthy screen time boundaries. And we want to encourage that. So it's like, we kind of encourage parents to be like, hey, just get Socialite, and you can kind of choose your limits and lock out certain things at certain times. I mean, and we never have reels on it. We believe that there's no reason to be consuming those. So that's always out. But so some of the other aspects were like, yeah, maybe you want to have DMs only mode on certain times, and sometimes you don't. And we give that power to the kids and the parents to work together. And parents can use it for themselves too. And we recommend that they do, because this is something that really impacts everyone.
Yeah, I love what you just said, which is that kids want and need help. I say this all the time. Even teenagers, they want and need boundaries. So whether that is coming from the parents or whether that's coming from an app, you need help. This is we all need help, right? With this stuff that is incredibly persuasive. Technology can be incredibly predatory, right? And I don't believe that any single brain can go up against thousands of engineers on the other side
Absolutely
of any given
not.
piece of technology. Yeah. So I think what I like about apps, and we work with Opal as well, and I agree, I do like what they do as well.
Yeah.
But it feels more collaborative, right? It feels a little bit less like I'm the mean mom and you can't handle it, whatever. It's a little bit more like, let's work together, and then let's also work around it a little bit. This is something I teach parents to do too, which is there's ways to kind of work around and help your kid belong, right? While still doing things that just help pace technology a little bit for them. So I'll give you an example. My son, as I said, is in 7th grade, but he just has an Apple Watch, which is plenty for him, honestly, at this age. But we worked with him, it was either going to be a Bark or something like that, or an Apple Watch, but he really he didn't want people to know he didn't have a phone. So we decided on the Apple Watch, because you get the little blue, I forget there's a name for this, but there's a stigma to not having the blue chat
absolutely.
in iMessage, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, you know what? Fine, let's do the Apple Watch. And even to this day, his friends don't really know he doesn't actually have a phone, right? So that's an example of a little workaround. Or when he was younger, if his friends were on TikTok and there was a trend, and he'd come home and be like, what is this? And I'd be like, well, let's look it up and figure it out, right? And so those are examples of little ways you can collaborate and not completely leave them out. Yes, I know it's back to the friction, and it's back to that's not the full experience, but there's ways you can kind of help your kids. Like you
Yeah.
guys were just talking about belonging, right?
Yeah,
While still
and what you
yeah,
said
go
about
ahead.
TikTok is it was very interesting because like he is probably in a great place because he doesn't have all these apps, but like yeah, there is that little piece where like all of a sudden he goes to school and all of his friends are up on this trend or thing that they all know about, and he's kind of outside of it because he doesn't have that, and there's no right or wrong way to do this. There's definitely a medium, and I think it's really great for parents to just really understand what like how like a lot of parents don't understand. They just see their kid on their phone. They're like, oh my God, you're on your phone too much. They don't like sit down with your kid. Like my advice to parents is sit down with your kid and understand how they're using these apps and why they have them. Be like, okay, so Instagram, what's good about it? Why do you like using it? And then say like, I would suggest all parents, ask your kid why do you need to watch short form content? Like
Yeah.
why why would you choose to do that? And I think it's very. They would just say, "Oh, it's fun. I like to see it. It's a good break for me." Whatever they want to say. But there's all these as a parent, I really encourage parents to understand how these apps work, understand the social features, understand the distracting features, and really work with your kids on. I mean, maybe you should get the app and use it a little bit too if you don't, so you can just understand how they use it, because it's a very interesting world where parents will just see what their kid is doing and see that there's an issue and they won't connect with them on it.
Yeah.
So that's,
I think what you said is so key. And this is what I tell parents too, which is you have to understand how the technology works before you give it, right? So if you're going to give Snapchat, you better download it and figure
yeah,
out what it is and how it works and all that stuff, because you are going to need to oversee it. And that's honestly one of the reasons why I delay is I know what all this stuff entails, what it
yeah,
takes to really guide a kid through this. And I don't have the time or the energy or anything to do this, right? So
sure.
I think what you said is really key. It's not only is it connective, right? So you can really understand what they're doing and why they like it. But it's also for like safety and mental health and everything else, right? To
Of
be there as
course.
a parent to help guide them. So that's super
Yeah.
important. Like you better get the app before you say yes to
Yeah,
it
and
or
but
yeah.
and also before you take it, before you just decide, some parent says, "Hey, that my kid's spending a bunch of time on Instagram. I don't want to have that." You should, but before you decide that it's not for your kid, really understand what the app does and talk to them. Be like, "Hey, like,
Yeah.
how are your friends using Instagram? Like, if you don't have this, like, it depends. Like, all over the world, I have friends in Spain, and a lot of people use Instagram a lot more casually there for communicating. There in Europe, whereas here it's more Snapchat, and it really just depends. And so you have to find out, and it varies by school too. So like, find out where are your friends communicating, and if it is Instagram, maybe you let them have that, and you understand the boundaries, and you can help guide them through. Whether you choose to use Socialite, whether you choose Opal, understand what it does, understand how you can help them with it, and that's really my suggestion. That's I mean, I think you really hit on that very well, where it's just like, yeah, you have to make sure you understand what it is before you let them have it, but also understand what they're going to be missing if you fully dismiss it. I think is
Yeah.
also very important.
Yeah, I mean, another tip I give, especially for younger teens, is ask your kid which one app would you want to have, right? Like, don't just give them all of them unbridled, right? Because that is a recipe for a ton of time lost and so many other things, right? So I don't know. I heard you kind of alluding to that too. Like, what is the one that your friends use? What is the one that's important, right? Because, like you said, different regions, different friend groups, it can be
Yeah,
different, right? Where
yeah.
kids are communicating. Yeah.
Absolutely. Start with that. Start with one and see how they do. And if
Yeah.
they're able to manage it, add a few. And I think you can really learn together. And if you just slowly introduce and slowly add stuff in, slowly work on it, eventually you could very easily have your kid have all of these apps. I mean, you both understand all of the features and all of the apps, and you can agree on your own boundaries for usage, and also digital safety, because that's a huge thing. All of these apps have, of course, there's always going to be privacy issues. There's always going to be other people on these apps that can be dangerous. So
Yeah.
there's so many things to think about, and so I think really
Yeah.
breaking it down is an awesome way to approach it,
Yeah,
and just
for
having an open
sure.
mind.
Yeah. Okay. I would love to ask you guys one more thing, and I'd love to hear what both of you have to say about this. But so let's talk about like Gen Z sentiment. So 47% of Gen Z say they wish TikTok was never invented. 45% say they won't let their own kids have smartphones until high school. So you guys are part of a generation that's rising up against the technology of your time. That has never happened in history, as far as I know. My generation didn't rise up against TVs, right? So what does that move? What does this movement mean to you? And like, I guess what gives you hope about the future?
I think that social media has a lot of benefits for our generation that cannot be ignored. I mean, I have a bit of an international background, as does Mason, and social media is solely responsible for being able to keep connections up across different countries and different continents. But I do think that with where the kind of the big companies are coming from and with how their goals are kind of not aligned with what's best for the people, I think that's kind of led to this damaging state that where we're at. And I think that the younger generation knows this, and I think that's the important part. The statistics that you quoted show that people are very aware of how damaging this is, and I think that is probably the biggest thing that gives us hope. And I think the fact that the younger generation does get to ultimately choose where these end up going. It's about how we use them and about what we want. And so having the ability to take control in that essence and choose, which sides of social media we want to use. I mean, that's part of the best part about social is you get to pick which part of social media you want. So you can pick the part that allows you to stay connected and is just absolutely beneficial, and remove the parts that have been kind of forced upon us that no one is really on board with, and just allowing us to remove that element.
Yeah, and I mean, adding on to that, I think the main thing is like what you said. Like almost half of kids our age agree that they would rather have never had these social apps be a thing. And
Yeah.
I think if everyone was able to say, hey, we're gonna cut this out entirely, I think a lot of people would vote to be like, hey, let's not do this anymore. But the problem is, if everyone has this fear of missing out, and if you're not on these apps, it's like you'll especially for a kid, like I'd say high school, middle school, and high school are the biggest. Where like there's all these different trends, there's all these different new slang, new languages, new
Yeah.
jokes. And if you're not spending the time on these apps that everyone else is, you're gonna be socially, even in person, you're gonna have issues where you don't understand what's going on. Oh, you haven't seen that trend? Oh, no, I haven't. I don't really spend time on social media. Oh, well, we're talking about
Yeah.
this now, so now you don't understand what's going on because you're not spending your time on TikTok. So I think if I mean honestly, I think like for me, if I had a choice to just be like, hey, let's never have had short form content be a thing, I think I would, and I think a lot of people would say absolutely. But nobody's going to collectively stop spending time on it. It's impossible. Just with like a lot of issues that we wish we could in this world that we wish we could just go back and fix, but are the way they are now. And so now it's just about really really working with it, and trying to navigate it as best as possible. But I think everyone can agree, yes, this has had a very very big impact on our society, but it's here now. And even though a lot of people, I think we would probably be better without it, it's here. And so it's really just about how we navigate it and how we use it. And I think for me, like I've been okay to step away. Unfortunately, with social media marketing for our app, I have to be updated with everything that happens, and I wish I didn't have to be.
Yeah.
But for most people, and for me, I had to really market the app and stay up to date with all the trends. I kind of got comfortable with myself with not really engaging with being updated on every single trend and knowing every little social media thing. Because at the end of the day, if you really want to have a genuine conversation with someone, it's not going to be about those things, and you can be comfortable with not knowing everything that's going on social media. And I think that's the direction. It's hard for a lot of people, especially in social. Middle school is so hard socially, and you want to be as included as possible. And it's so hard to navigate that. I mean, at that age, accept the fact that, hey, maybe we need to take a step back. And so I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I definitely agree with the fact that there's absolutely reason for people saying that they don't want these apps anymore, because we can all realize that they've taken a lot. But now, like I said, I think now it's just about how we navigate it. But that's kind of
And
why.
And I think
Yeah.
the increasing awareness over the negative side effects of it, like, I mean, 90% of our generation is aware that it's not good for us, is kind of helping the collective action where, like my friend groups, we don't use social media as our main form of chatting. We just use texting and that kind of thing. And when your friends are doing the same thing that you are, it becomes so much easier to kind of break these habits and get out of kind of the spot where you're just stuck on the short form content, the social media loop.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Collective action. Yeah. Collective action is super important and a big part of this. And I'll add one more sentiment before we wrap up, because I see things from the parent side, right? And I will tell you, even you guys are outliers, by the way. The fact that your parents delayed and put limits, right? That is actually not very typical for people your age. Most, and you guys probably have seen this, most kids your age had unbridled access, right? From a very young age. So I will just say, just in the last 3 years, and I really credit Anxious Generation with this, parents are incredibly aware now. More parents are delaying, more parents are giving less, right? And then on top of that, we have legislation that is picking up. I don't know how you guys feel about the 16 plus. I hate the word ban, but guidelines for social media that are happening all over the world now, right? And what those things do, they help you guys, right? Because it gets around that issue that you were talking about, which is, well, everybody's on here, right? I have to be on here. Well, if all parents said not till 16, nobody would have this problem, right? First of all. And then if there were laws that help give guidelines for parents, then parents could feel more confident making these choices, because parents, we don't want you guys to feel socially excluded. Like, that is painful. And that's why most parents say yes. But I guess I'll just end with that sentiment, which is that these are really meaningful changes that have happened just in the past few years. So I'm optimistic that Gen Alpha hopefully will have it maybe a little bit easier than you guys, but we'll see. I do believe that. Just in the past few years, I've seen a big change. So yeah, I don't know if you guys had anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered it really well. I think what you were saying about the 16, the 16 plus is like, we were just talking about it. A lot of people really wish it never was a thing. And if we can collectively, as a government, as a society, make it so it's not a thing and it's not a factor, then the social anxiety is immediately removed from that. And that's why, and I totally support that. And that is the biggest piece. It's not about not allowing parents to make their own decisions. It's just about it's about putting you're really allowing everyone to be on the same playing field socially, and so that way there isn't anxiety around having to keep up with these apps and having to have them, and really also reinforcing communication skills that are developed at those younger ages is huge. And if you're not communicating through a screen all the time, and you have to ask someone for a phone number instead of going in and quick adding them on Snapchat and never having to speak to them originally, it does make that difference. It really does.
Yeah. Well, you guys, I kept you longer than I want to. Thank you so much for your time. I love what you're doing. It feels very rebellious to me, which I love anything that has like a rebel vibes to it. So thank you. I said this in the beginning, but it's going to take people like you to enact change, not people like me. So you guys are going to be who makes change in your generation. So thank you so much for your time and everything you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.